Okay, yeah, we're back for another edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow here. I'm not in a good mood. So I'm just starting off right off the bat. How did the Rams lose that game last week? We're not even 30 seconds into the pod. I need to get into this immediately. We need to talk about this because that killed almost every single teaser, parlay, happiness that I was going to have on a Sunday. If there was any bet that you were not going to be worried about this week, it was going to be the Rams going up against the Jets. Julian, I actually have all the odds of how this game played out and how the Jets went from massive underdogs to favorites back to underdogs. It was incredible. You want to talk about like how the election and all that was going on haywire? This was even more entertaining.
Yeah.
Hold on. Don't start yet. The Jets closed plus 1,000 on the money line. The Rams minus 1,667. By the time the Jets were almost at the half, the Rams were plus 290 on the money line. It was an absolute atrocity. This is the live lines that I'm talking about because you can always bet live on the DraftKings Sportsbook. This was just such an absolute disaster that the Jets were able to go up 13-0 at one point. And we're still underdogs, plus 130 on the money line if you were betting that live. Like, no faith in the Rams. In the Jets to win this game, but they still did. You could tease them down to minus 11.5 in teasers, the Rams. Just an absolute disaster. Go ahead.
It was a disaster, and it wasn't even a game that I bet on.
I did a lot.
Well, okay, let me continue. It wasn't a game that I bet on before the game.
Oh, sure.
I was locked into Chiefs minus 2.5 in that late window. That's what I needed. That hit great. But then out of the corner of my eye, you see the way that Rams game goes. The Jets score first. 17.5 point favorites. The Jets score first, and the line immediately goes to Rams minus 6.5. I was like, that's a big overreaction. So
yeah,
Rams minus 6.5. Yeah, so that's a big overreaction off of one drive. So I play the Rams minus 6.5. Then as the game goes on, things aren't looking great. I go, I know how I can get this money back. I'll just bet the Rams on the money line. It's a pick 'em now. What can go wrong? So I doubled down on the money line and I lost both, obviously. It was a decent NFL week. We gave some props on here, like Derrick Henry. We didn't even have the number. He went over his rushing prop. Jonathan Taylor, we didn't even have the number. He went over his rushing prop. The Chiefs, we gave out several plays. The plays that I put on Twitter went 7-2, but I shared that I would be getting in live on the Rams, and I lost pretty much all those winnings back on the Rams. So that was an ugly one. That's one of those one a year clunkers. Like we saw last year, week 17, Miami wins in New England as a 17.5 point dog, takes New England's bye away, and kicks Tom Brady out the door in New England with a pick 6 in the wild card round to Tennessee. It was that kind of game. And now the Rams it was clearly a look ahead spot for the Rams because basically we have a game this weekend for the division that we're going to talk about later in Seattle, which Seattle grinds out the win against Washington. And now they have the lead in the division. LA has to win this game in Seattle, basically, to win the division.
And it's just amazing, too, when the Jets went up 20-3. They were minus 400 on the money line. Like, unbelievable that they were that deep live. Minus 400 when they went up to 20-3. It was amazing.
That was in the second half?
Yes. Yep. It was unbelievable because the Jets, too, I was hearing that like they have continuously scored on their opening drive, like for I think it's like 6 straight weeks now or whatnot. Yeah, like it's been a thing for them, but they absolutely trashed their overall team total, which was set at 12.5. They did that before the half was even over,
as the Bengals did on Monday Night Football. Oh. Yeah, I mean, who had their Jets Bengals money line parlay? Though that's the ticket I'm waiting to see. I asked for it on Twitter. I haven't seen one yet. Man, what was I going to say? Oh, the Rams also scored the game-winning touchdown and got it called back on holding.
Yep. Yes. I think it was Higbee that scored that one too. Yep.
Was it? It was.
Yeah, I think it was. Hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was a disaster
Somebody scored
either
a
way.
touchdown, didn't count, cost me a little bit of cash.
You know what's great about Twitter too? Somebody tweeted out that if you had a Rams Bengals money line parlay, that it would have been worth 3.5 million, and people were like, "Oh my god, really?" Twitter is great. If you want some free entertainment, make sure to go on Twitter. Okay, just needed to get that out of the way. I cannot believe how that transpired. This is my therapy, the podcast. They allow us to do this, so at least I can't talk to anybody else about this. Nobody cares. So at least you can pretend like you care. Big night tonight. I know. Well, that's why we do this together. Big night tonight in the NBA. Last night, this is kind of like how all the sports. So last night was opening night. Yeah, a couple games. Tonight's really opening night. And, there's a lot to dive into here. Number of games that you can play on the DraftKings Sportsbook. But before we wanted to get to that, the DraftKings Sportsbook also released a lot of stats from last year, just kind of talking about how the season went from a betting perspective. Just kind of wanted to get into this quickly. Don't want to hit on this too much, but looking at some of the stats from last year, the most bet teams in the league last year. Can you guess the top two?
The most bet teams in the NBA last year. The Lakers and the Bucks?
Close. Lakers and Celtics. Bucks were not even in the top 5. Lakers, Celtics, Heat, Nuggets, and Clippers were the 5 most bet teams of the season last year. Most profitable. Top 4 teams, most profitable. Any idea?
Okay. Miami.
Yep, that's number 1.
In there. Denver probably has to be in there.
That's number 2.
I got the top 2. That's pretty good. I'm legit guessing these. I don't know these. Steve looked them all up, told me not to look. I'm legit guessing them. So I'm gonna retire on top with 1 and 2.
Okay, so you're doing great. Get your toy at the bottom of the window here. Heat, Nuggets 1 and 2. Suns number 3. Lakers were number 4. Suns obviously a team that.
So the Lakers were always big favorites and usually covered, so that makes sense. The Suns probably weren't even sniffing that until the 8-0 bubble run.
Sure.
And that probably got it for them.
And then looking at player props, we love player props. The 3 most profitable players on props last year. Number 1, Patrick Beverley was the most profitable player to bet on last year, followed by Marcus Smart and Steven Adams. The least profitable, I was shocked that this was number 1, but maybe obviously you'll have more insight of this. Ben Simmons was the least profitable player to bet on props last season. Luka Doncic was also in there. Go ahead.
Maybe the only reason I can think of for Simmons is because maybe everybody piled on that prop that DK offered for if he would hit a 3.
Sure, right.
So maybe a lot of people lost money on that.
So those were some of the stats from last year, just like kind of getting into that, just kind of a cool perspective to look into. But Julian, like I mentioned, a ton of games to get into for tonight. Obviously, tonight is the big night in the NBA. I know there's a lot of ones that you wanted to get into. What are you kind of looking towards for tonight? Help people make some of that green.
Well, first of all, I want to see how a developing story. We record this on Wednesday morning, so by the time it gets out, maybe we'll have some updates here. James Harden obviously wants out of Houston. That's no secret.
Right.
A pretty big storyline. James Harden is now being investigated by the league for a video circulating of him at an adult entertainment club.
First time we've heard of that. Go ahead.
It is no secret that James Harden enjoys outings to these type of places, whether it be in Houston, where his jersey is raised to the rafters, on road trips, Miami, Atlanta. He enjoys these places. And now, if this video that is circulating is proven to be recent, he's going to be out tonight again or on Wednesday against the Thunder, and potentially longer. Because of the protocols that will come with it. So that's a good way to force your way out of town if that proves true. Player prop markets was something I was going to loop to at the end, but if Harden is out, now we have to start looking at John Wall, at DeMarcus Cousins, Eric Gordon. This is the bread and butter in NBA, the way that you really want to play things. Unexpected injuries, unexpected. It's a historically short off season. So the load management that's now becoming such a big thing in the NBA. where this guy's fine, but we have a back-to-back. We're going to give him tonight off an hour and a half before tip. And then you look at his teammates' player props. So that's something that just timing-wise, Harden, obviously a huge name, that caught my eye for tonight now. But diving into the games, my best bets article is up on the DK playbook. There are a few spots that I like. So the first one that I wrote up is just dumpster diving right off the bat. The Charlotte Hornets at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Awful.
Two brutal teams.
Who knows how I got here, but I am here. So the expectation is that Gordon Hayward, who broke something in his hand, was going to be out for this game. He now says that he's going to play through that finger injury and be okay.
So brave.
Very brave. The Hornets, not a great team, but signing Hayward, they were 23-42 last year. They signed Hayward. They have a couple of encouraging young prospects, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges. We'll see what a kid like LaMelo Ball can do. But if there's a team he's going to play well against, it's a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers. Other side, you got Cleveland, who went 19-46 last year. They lose Tristan Thompson in free agency to the Celtics. That's a key role piece for them. Kevin Love, who we were expecting to play originally in this game, is ruled out. So there goes Cleveland's best player. And then just to pile on top of it, the Cavs aren't a deep team, but they're going to be without guys like Kevin Porter Jr., Matthew Dellavedova, Dante Exum, all these guys ruled out. The Hornets are going to be the better team out of the gate, especially if Hayward is healthy, looking to prove himself. Like, he's a guy that can, It wouldn't surprise anybody if he had 25, 5, and 5 in this game. And if he does that with no Kevin Love on the other side, the Hornets are going to win this game. So it's kind of a gross spot. It's not a spot that would jump out to many, I don't think, because it's such a bad game. But I like the Hornets on opening night.
And then you talk about that too, like the Hornets. Very rare that they were favored last season. They only favored 6 times last year. They went 3-3 against the spread. Only away favorites once last season. They did cover in that game. And then you look at Cleveland last year, home underdogs, 14-13-2 against the spread. Like you mentioned, this is a gross game. Neither team is looking like they're going to be in contention at all. You're playing for a nice favorable pick for next year. So gross game on the surface, but obviously there's some value there because of the injuries that are piling up. Like you mentioned with Kevin Love, it didn't take long for him to start, being shelved. So we'll start with that one there. Not one you want to be, not an overly exciting one, but we're here to make money, and that's what we care about.
That's why we're here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, most of these I would play small. Like, I'm not going to put too much faith in the Hornets on opening night, but it's a spot that I like. So another spot that I'm kind of trusting here, the Washington Wizards plus 7.5 at the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers are good, and they were a very good home team last year. Obviously fell apart a little bit.
Not a good road team, but go ahead.
Not a good road team, but this one's in Philly. I like what they did. They somehow got rid of the Al Horford contract. They now surround Simmons and Embiid with the type of players they need to be surrounded by. 3-and-D guys, Danny Green, Seth Curry. This is how you win in the NBA. You knock down threes and you defend around your superstars. So I think that they no doubt improved. But the Wizards have the rep of being this awful team, especially since from what we saw in the bubble last year. But in the bubble, they were no Beal, no Bertans. They had nothing. It was impressive that they got to the bubble, really, to have a sniff at a playoff spot, even though they were the least likely team probably to make the postseason in the bubble. But you reset, you get healthy. Not only do you have Bradley Beal and Davis Bertans both back healthy, but you add Russell Westbrook to the mix, which John Wall wasn't there last year, and Russell Westbrook is an upgrade over John Wall, even had he been there. So Westbrook has a lot to prove. Beal has a lot to prove in a free agency year, whether, Washington's obviously desperate to get him back, but whether Beal wants to re-sign or not, he's playing to impress for a max deal. And there's decent pieces around him. You've got Thomas Bryant, Robin Lopez. They have bodies that can be thrown at Embiid, which not every team has. Not saying Washington's going to win this game, but I think that, the narrative on the Wizards is that they're just this bottom of the barrel team because of what they were last year. But Westbrook and Beal, that's going to keep you in games. I think 7.5 is a lot of points. I think they can at least make this a game.
And then, going back to last year, Philly, for as good as they were at home, 29-2 overall, 16-10-2 against the spread as home favorites. So it's not like, that they're against the spread was as impressive as their win-loss record at home, but Washington 13-14-2 against the spread as road underdogs. Obviously not a great number, but for the value you're probably getting on this
I would
line,
throw those numbers out the window, given,
sure, with
for Washington.
Right. Absolutely. I can't disagree with that, but the value you're getting here, plus 7.5, definitely have to take a look at it.
So this one's moved a lot. I grabbed it at 2.5. I wrote it up in best bets at 3.5. It's now 4.5. I'm a Celtics guy. There's no secret there. But we're going against them early and often, I think, this season. They're going to be without Kemba Walker, obviously, for roughly a month. So Gordon Hayward going to Charlotte, I think those two things combined really leaves them thin in a way that people are overlooking. And you do add Tristan Thompson up front, which is helpful now. You have that big man rotation with Tice, and Robert Williams is looking to improve. But those bigs can only take you so far. Those are complementary pieces. Those are role pieces. You look at what this team has left. Like, they needed Kemba in the postseason and Marcus Smart stepping into that starting role and playing 40, 42, 44 minutes apiece because Hayward wasn't there to come off the bench when he was injured. If you take Hayward and Kemba off,
yep,
now you have Smart, Tatum, and Brown either playing 44, 45 minutes, which they're not going to do because it's not the postseason, like they were doing in the bubble. They need to get some rest. And that other starter that goes in there, that other wing starter, it's been Javonte Green in preseason. It could be Semi Ojeleye, like whoever the name is, it's not a very good player. And then you go to the guys behind, and it's the lottery pick, Aaron Nesmith, who still needs a lot of work. It's Peyton Pritchard. It's Carson Edwards. It's not good players. This team is not deep. Then you have Milwaukee, lost a little bit of depth, but got better overall, adding Drew Holiday. I don't think you can argue with that. And Milwaukee's still, they didn't get Bogdanovich, which hurts a little bit. But this is a deep team. This is a team that, although it may pace itself more in the regular season so that it finds the postseason success that it wants, this has been a very successful regular season team in recent years. So it's a combination of backing Milwaukee and fading the Celtics. And I think there's a reason this line grows. And anything under 5, I think I would take it from Milwaukee.
Yeah, and you look at the Celtics, who were underdogs 24 times last season, and they're already underdogs as the line is set right now in the first 2 games of the season. And they were excellent in that spot as underdogs.
They have
last year. They have been excellent teams against the spread as underdogs, going off the numbers from last year. 18-6 against the spread as underdogs last year, covering by an average of 7 points. It wasn't even close. They were underdogs. They excelled. And we'll talk about that game against the Nets later on, but just also something to think about too as well. But obviously, as you mentioned, how deep the Bucks are, this is probably going to be a tough one for them as well. I know another game you're interested in is Pistons Timberwolves. Timberwolves -5 right now. Obviously, a lot of changes for the Timberwolves coming into this season. Obviously, they used that first overall pick, Anthony Edwards. They added Ricky Rubio via trade during the very short offseason here, but -5 favorites on this one. Let's hear it.
Yeah, we went dumpster diving with the first game. We're going dumpster diving again to finish off the Wednesday slate. Look, so I wrote this one up and locked it in at 4.5. Obviously, we're getting some movement in the right direction. You can bet it at 5. That's fine. Do I want to back the Timberwolves? Not necessarily, but Karl Anthony Towns has a great matchup here against Detroit, who has nobody that I see that can really, keep him under control. D'Angelo Russell, who had been hurt in preseason, is off the injury report and is a full go. So Minnesota is going to clearly have the 2 most talented players on the floor.
Yep.
We'll see what Anthony Edwards is, but he has an NBA body. Like, he's ready to contribute right away. From an athletic standpoint, he should be able to hang on the floor and, show some flashes. Then Ricky Rubio. I like D'Angelo Russell playing off the ball and getting a veteran like Ricky Rubio to help a young team like this out. A good defensive player, a very capable player of running the offense, distributing the shots between younger, immature players on Minnesota. And he's been in Minnesota before, so he's familiar there, which I like. So that's why I like Minnesota. This is more a fate of the Pistons. I think the Pistons are going to be absolutely awful this season. There's 2 win total unders that I bet. The Hawks, who are a hot team that everybody likes, got them at a good number. And the Pistons are the other team that I bet to go under their win total. They traded Drummond in the middle of last year to Cleveland. That allowed Christian Wood to open up as one of the popular young hot names in the NBA. He goes to Houston this offseason, which I think really hurts the Pistons. And the Pistons respond by signing a flurry of mediocre power forwards and centers that are going to do nothing for you, like the opposite of what you want to win in the NBA. I like Jeremy Grant as a player. I think that's a good signing. Also get Plumlee from Denver. Weird. Also get Jahlil Okafor. Just guys that aren't going to help you. And, they brought in plenty of rookies. They had some first-round picks. That's great. They're not going to help you win right away. Killian Hayes, great DFS value for tonight, but not going to help you win games. That leaves you with Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin as kind of your 2 best players, which is great in 2012, but 10 surgeries later for both of them, this isn't necessarily a time that they're going to lead this team to victories. So I like Minnesota here. I think that Detroit is going to be god-awful this year.
And let's not be scarred by what Minnesota was like against the spread last year. They were brutal. They're one of the worst in the league. 3-13-1 as home favorites last year.
I'm clearly going against a lot of trends today, except for the trend that the Charlotte Hornets were 1-0 as road favorites last year. We hit that trend 100%.
23-39-2 overall. That was the worst in the league for the Timberwolves. They were not a team to back last year, but the whole new season, whole clean slate, Ricky Rubio in the mix, Anthony Edwards in the mix. Hopefully we can reverse some of those numbers from last year, but 3-13-1 is home favorites last year. That was absolutely brutal. Real quick, let's hit on the Christmas slate. As I kind of mentioned earlier, you're already looking at that Nets-Celtics game. The Nets had opened -1 on the spread. It has moved to -2 as we record this Wednesday morning. Like I mentioned, the Celtics were unbelievable against the spread last year as underdogs, going 18-6 and covering by an average of 7 points. But the Nets are one of the teams that we've seen already. We already saw how well Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant gelled together last night. The 40 points that they scored in the first quarter was the most of any season opening game in franchise history. So a really nice start for the Nets. I would expect, Julian, the Nets would be one of the hotter teams that people are looking at to bet on this season, but you got to lean on this one already.
I've had this spot circled since Friday. I've been trying to bet the Nets on Christmas against the Celtics since Friday. It's now Wednesday. I think I'm going to be able to get the bet in today. It did move a point after Brooklyn demolished Golden State last night on Tuesday night. I think that does speak to the Warriors being thin, being a new team, weird team, Curry gelling with guys like Wiseman, Kelly Oubre, Andrew Wiggins. But there's no denying how good the Nets looked, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think was the more impressive thing because we know guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie can score. How deep, first of all, Durant looked fantastic coming back from the Achilles for the first time in a year and a half. Kyrie looked fantastic coming back from whatever injury he was probably faking last year, and all the drama that he throws out there, he looked great.
And real quick too, I just want to add in, obviously there was no minute restriction for Durant last night either. So I think that kind of is important of how healthy they do think he is in his conditioning and all that, because this was obviously, we saw LeBron James was going to be on a minute limit to open up the season and kind of keep him fresh, but they just kind of unleashed the chains on Durant last night.
He should be good to go. We're about a year and a half from the Achilles tear. He's had plenty of time, the way the schedule worked out to get back, and he looked fully back in that game. So the way that he looked plays a huge role. And then the depth of this team. Karis LeVert comes off the bench.
Yeah.
he led that team. Obviously, he leads the second unit. He puts up huge numbers with the second unit. Dinwiddie starting, DeAndre Jordan, Joe Harris, 3-and-D guy, Jarrett Allen. That team is so deep. And I've expressed how I think the Celtics are extremely thin right now. My favorite play of the week on the NBA side, the college side, the NFL side, anything, is the Brooklyn Nets. I kind of like the money line, but I think they're going to destroy in this game. So I just don't like losing the value on this point. But Nets -2 Christmas Day against the Celtics is my single favorite play of the week. We saw these two teams play on Friday, like I said, in preseason in Boston.
Yep.
The Nets won the first quarter. The starters basically played the first and third quarters. The Nets won the first quarter by 12 and the third quarter by 14 or 16. I forget. Either way, they dominated that game, and I don't see why that's going to change. The Nets absolutely rolled the other night. I expect the Celtics to not look good against Milwaukee. So by the time this one rolls around on Christmas, I could see 3, 4, 4.5 this game getting to. So I most certainly want to get it early.
Yeah, so grabbing that early, obviously there'll be reactions as the day goes on and whatnot. But like you said, this line has moved already after opening at -1. Anything else you want to do to close out NBA before we head over to the NFL?
I'm going to loop back to Wednesday night for one more NBA spot. And of course, follow along on Twitter. Player props, breaking news, that's where the strongest plays come from. But yep. I am liking the Pelicans more and more against the Raptors. You have to remember this is a home game for the Raptors. That means it's being played in Tampa, the home of the Tampa Bay Raptors. So the narrative maybe is that New Orleans doesn't necessarily care as much after shipping Drew Holiday to Milwaukee, but how can you turn down that haul of draft picks to kind of get guys to go with Zion, build for your future? This team's still good. This team still has good defensive players. Eric Bledsoe. They got Steven Adams, which is kind of flying under the radar. And Lonzo Ball. Ingram is the most improved player in the NBA. And then I think Zion's just going to take a huge leap this season if he can stay out there healthy, unrestricted. And the Raptors lost some pieces. They lost Ibaka most notably to the Clippers. We saw both of them actually last night in that LA game, and Gasol. So Toronto, I think, is going to lose a step defensively. New Orleans is going to get better defensively. New Orleans just has more overall talent, and New Orleans is a bigger team. Toronto, a smaller team now. I think I'm liking the Pelicans +4, and even on the money line against Toronto in what is a neutral court game, really.
And there's one thing you can actually do too on the DraftKings Sportsbook. You can bet on the over/under for a team's winning percentage. The Pelicans are set at 48.5, which would be about a 7% bump from last year when they were at 41.5 as they went 30 and 42. Any quick thoughts on that one?
I mean, the win percentage ones are. I'm going lighter on NBA futures, like I said.
Sure.
So I think the Pelicans will be better than expected. We're talking about the Pelicans, right?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure. I think the Pelicans are going to be better than
send help
expected. I was confused them with the Pistons for a second because the Pistons are one of the teams that I bet under. So the only two things, honestly, NBA future-wise, that I bet are I don't necessarily like the number on DK for the Hawks right now because I think they will be improved.
Yep.
I have them under 37.5 wins, which means 38 and 34 is what beats you. Versus around 35 wins beats you right now on the number at DK. But I do like Detroit under. My lean on the Pelicans would be over. I think they're going to be better than people expect, and the loss of Holiday gets you a better number. But I'm not going crazy with the NBA futures. I will say after last night, it's such an overreaction. It's very square. But that's kind of what I needed to see from the Nets to say, okay, the talent is real. They should be better than Milwaukee, Boston, Toronto, Philly, Miami. They're more talented. So the Nets to win the East, if you wanted to just take if you liked them and wanted to take a tiny little sneak peek, how do things look? If Durant and Kyrie stay healthy, that's the best team in the East.
Moving over to the NFL, starting on Christmas Day on Friday, you have 4 straight days of games, starting with the Christmas Day game, Vikings and Saints. We have a 3-game slate on Saturday, all the games mostly on Sunday, and then the 1 game to close it out, Bills and Patriots. Who cares about that one? Obviously, it's an easy Bills win. Take them -7, take them -14. I don't care what you want to do. Just take the Bills. Not crazy about this Vikings-Saints game. Drew Brees back in the mix. Not what we expected for Alvin Kamara, although he did get that touchdown late, but not a great looking game for Drew Brees. Don't really feel comfortable taking either side in that one. So I think maybe that's just a day to enjoy your family, enjoy whatever you do on Christmas, and just watch the game. It's probably going to be an entertaining game, but I'm not crazy about how that line is set. Saints -7 on that one, over under 51.5. 2 really well set lines, quite frankly. So I'm probably just going to stay away from that one. If there's a game that I absolutely love, and this game has already had some drastic movement already, it's the Colts -2 against the Steelers. Once upon a time, the Steelers were 2.5-point favorites in this game. So we've seen some dramatic movement already, and
I mean, we
so.
certainly know why.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Bengals were out for blood the other day. They were trying to take out every single member of that Steelers team, especially Juju Smith-Schuster, which might have put an end to his dancing on the opposing team's logo in the center of the field. I like taunting stuff, so like that doesn't bother me too much. But I also like when people, respond to it. So never want people to get hurt, but you kind of giggle a little bit, Let's go blast it. So the Colts now are favorite in this game. And when they've been favored this season, you almost can't beat them. 5-1 against the spread as road favorites this season, covering by an average of just under 7 points. And you look at the Steelers, this mega undefeated team coming into, week 10, week 11. No one's going to take these guys down. Over the past 3 weeks, this stellar defense has now allowed an average of 25.3 points over the past 3 weeks. I feel like we don't look at the Colts as like this offensive juggernaut or anything, but they got a good offense, man. The rapport with Rivers and Hilton seems to be forming. Jonathan Taylor has really emerged since kind of given the RB1 duties in this role over the past few weeks. Everything is clicking for Indy right now. Everything is crumbling for the Steelers right now. That's like one of the ones that I want to lock in immediately because, quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if this line kept moving in the Colts' favor.
It might. It's so this is like the square spot of the week now, and that doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We just have to make sure it's the right side.
Right.
Is Pittsburgh really spiraling out of control this terribly, or are they going to get it together at some point before the playoffs? Which if they don't, so Pittsburgh, after going 11-0, Pittsburgh is now 11-3. They have 2 games left, and the look-ahead line on Week 17 against the Browns is, I think, 3 or 4 in favor of the Browns. Wow. So Pittsburgh is now favored, if you just take the favorite in each game, to go 11-5 and end the season on a 5-game losing streak. Is that really going to happen? I don't know. We all thought that they were kind of the fraudulent 11-0 team, and they I think they've already proven that they are. Even if they finish the season 13-3, that's not all that good.
Hopefully, you got that Chiefs #1 seed bet locked in a couple weeks ago.
Plus 140. That was easy money, unless the Bills do something ridiculous. It really doesn't even matter. The Chiefs just need to puke all over themselves, and the Chiefs don't lose games. The only game the Chiefs have lost going back to their 2019 bye was the Raiders game this year.
Yep.
They've, whatever it is, 22-1 in their run or something like that. So yeah, the Chiefs just don't lose. I think I like the Colts in this game. I'm not going to bet Pittsburgh. I'm not going to be trendy and try and go the other way and take the value on Pittsburgh because it's shifted so much from the look ahead line, because they do truly look awful, particularly offensively. Part of that was the Bengals. The Bengals clearly got up for that game. in a way that maybe the Colts, because there's not that rivalry there, primetime Monday Night Football will. But it's a huge opportunity for Indy because Indy and Tennessee are both going to be favored in Week 17, playing relatively easier games. This is the week that probably decides that division. Tennessee has it right now, but if Tennessee loses the Sunday night game at Green Bay,
right,
a win for Indy puts them going into Week 17, win and you win the division.
Right.
So this is a huge game. I do lean to Indy. I need to think about it a little bit more and make sure that Pittsburgh is not going to bounce back, but they are getting dinged up. The receivers aren't making plays. Roethlisberger looks horrible under pressure.
Horrible.
It's probably an Indy spot. You're probably right.
It's not even a question. What did you see last week that made you maybe want to think about this? What have you seen over the past few weeks that maybe want you to think about this? If there was a get right game, it was that one. It was that one against the Bengals, going against fifth string quarterback Ryan Finley.
I've been betting against them. I took Washington against Pittsburgh for its first loss of the season, and then I took Buffalo against Pittsburgh. The Bengals I did not take. I just sat back and watched, and we'll see.
Can you imagine taking Joe Burrow #1 overall when you have Ryan Finley? Absurd. Absolutely absurd.
I mean,
I don't know why they would do that.
That's unfortunate.
Yep. And now they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence because they'll trade for it. Anyways. Another one I like a lot too. Guess who it is? Who was I just so angry about? The Rams. +1.5 against the Seahawks. Kind of like it. They opened at +2.5. Now it's down to 1.5. Rams are 2-1 against the spread as underdogs, and they cover by an average of 8.5 points in those situations. The Seahawks have been an absolutely awful team against the spread as of late. Kind of like the Chiefs. Chiefs have not been a good team against the spread lately either. But Seattle has failed to cover in 3 of their last 4 games, all of which they were favored in those games. It's been a brutal stretch against the spread for the Steelers right now. Nobody wants to take the Rams, especially after last week. I don't really care about that, but I just feel like this is such a good bounce back spot for them. Seattle has a very minimal pass rush, which is obviously what turns Jared Goff into a puddle. He cannot handle pressure. He was pressured on 7 dropbacks last week, Julian. He was averaging 1.5 yards per pass attempt on those dropbacks. Like, he just can't handle it. It's kryptonite. You're not going to get much of that from the Seahawks. And then all the receivers that he has with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Josh Reynolds, Higbee, everybody, they're not going to face much resistance against that Seattle secondary. I think this is just such an excellent bounce back spot for the Rams. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I like the idea. I don't care about any of the trends, how the Rams are as underdogs or how Seattle has been poor as the favorite lately, because it's a 1.5 point spread. It's basically a pick'em game for the division in Seattle. So I'm kind of throwing some of that stuff out the window. Seattle had one of these games against the Niners last year. It came down to the goal line. They lost on the last play of the game. Man, I mean, both of these teams, like, trying to figure out, I have Kansas City +115 on a ticket to win the AFC. Which I'm very confident in. Trying to figure out who's going to win the NFC. At one point, I really liked Seattle. At one point, I really liked the Rams. And then Seattle loses outright at home to the Giants. The Rams lose outright at home to the Jets. Like, these teams, the ceiling and floor on these two teams
massive
is about as high and low as you can get with anybody in the NFL. And then the doors also open for, I think the Bucks have the potential to get there, given how open the NFC is. If you think the Rams or Seahawks have the potential, then the Bucks have to have the potential. The two more stable teams probably have to be New Orleans and Green Bay.
Green Bay then.
Right? I would probably lean to Green Bay.
Gotta be Green
I
Bay.
have some very nice odds on Tampa from right when the Brady news was coming out that I am riding, but I might get in on some Green Bay to win the NFC. The conference is pretty wild. So we're getting sidetracked here. I also have Seattle plus 260 to win the division. So where I'm sitting, I'm going to watch this game and root for Seattle and probably not bet on it. I think I like Seattle in the game is what I'm going to say.
To win
the game.
Okay.
I don't necessarily know why. I think the defense has been better. I think they got some pressure on Washington last week, ended the game with a few sacks. Now, Dwayne Haskins' decision-making has certainly been in question on and off the field this week.
Right.
So it's a different situation, but I think Seattle's defense will be good enough. I think give me Russell Wilson over Goff, and I'll go to Seattle.
All right. So I know that you are a fan, and this is in the Saturday slate of games. Now, I know you're a fan of the Cardinals. They're minus 230. You like them on the money line or the spread?
No, the spread. What are we at? 5 right now?
Okay, 5 against the 49ers. Yeah, I feel like that's just a layup. I mean, the 49ers, now they're starting CJ Beathard because Nick Mullins is out. Raheem Mostert's out. Both guys done for the season. I mean, that team just continues to just lose bodies at an unbelievable rate. So they got CJ Beathard starting against the Cardinals, who finally kind of started to show some life again last week. -5 for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I locked this one at 4. I think you can play it up. I would play it up to 6.5, honestly. The Niners got officially eliminated last week because the Cardinals won. And now the Cardinals need to keep winning to try and ensure a playoff spot. And they get the 49ers, who they beat earlier in the season, and the injuries just keep getting worse. But with San Francisco getting eliminated, that you still want to try, of course, but you can start to shut guys down. There's no reason for most to play. A guy like Kittle, who had the potential to come back if this game mattered, won't come back. Jimmy G, no reason to bring him back. So now now Nick Mullins is out. We're down to CJ Beathard, who, I don't know, maybe he is better than Nick Mullins. Who knows? Who cares? But it's just so many bodies and now officially eliminated. I just think it has to be a down week, whereas the Cardinals get a big win against the Eagles.
Right.
And should keep pushing here. So, I think the Cardinals, anything up to 6.5, I think is a square but strong play this week.
And Eagles, you're also a fan of on the money line, which is currently at -132, going against the Cowboys in that afternoon window of the Sunday games. -2 on the spread, if you're interested in that. Over under of 49.5, which, when you think about it real quick, it's like, that seems kind of high, but obviously the emergence of Jalen Hurts, how good he's been on the ground, not super accurate so far. I think he's had less than a 60% completion rate in his 2 starts so far. He hasn't been overly accurate throwing the ball, but this is a team that you can definitely throw the ball against. It's just, of course, his, questionable receivers that he has. Alshon Jeffrey has been almost a non-factor even when he's been on the field. Obviously, the Zach Ertz has just been, a shell of his former self. Dallas Goedert has really been the guy in this one. Jalen Reagor is starting to get a little bit of rapport with, which would be nice because he's such a good downfield threat. But this is definitely a team that you can throw against. I don't love the play with the Eagles. This might be just a stay away spot for me. I might be interested in the over 49.5 if I was going to take anything in this one. But you're on the Eagles -132 on the money line.
Yeah. So, I mean, Dallas is still alive. It's won 2 games in a row now against the Bengals and then against the 49ers, both who aren't very good. I just think the way the Eagles are playing right now with Hurts, it's brought that team back to life, and it has a chance at the division. Washington obviously has a lot in question right now, so I think that if a team swoops in for the division, it has to, and the Giants as well have been kind of crumbling. So if a team swoops in for the division, I guess it's going to be the Eagles. This is just kind of the thing. They should have made this switch earlier. I had Jalen Hurts plus 11,000 to win Rookie of the Year.
Oh my!
Which, if you just did this in week 5 or 6, I would have been so much happier.
For Julian, why couldn't you have done this? Go ahead.
So anyway, back to the point. I think the way Hurts is playing right now, they're going to have a shot in any game. I think Dallas is being a little overvalued because of the last couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
Philly's the side. They're playing better on both sides of the ball. And I think that the Hurts move has just re-energized them to the point that they are playing up to their potential in a lot of different ways.
And if anything, and it's kind of crazy to think about this, but if Zeke Elliott is healthy in this one, I actually think it kind of hurts them more than it helps, because Tony Pollard has definitely been the guy we saw. He just was a beast last week and getting a ton of touches, over 40% of the team's touches last week. Tough matchup for whoever is active in this one. If there's anything that the Eagles have been consistent with this season, they have been good against the run. Their defensive line has been very good this year. That is definitely something that they'll have to try to overcome, but they're a little bit weaker in the secondary. But like I mentioned, the Cowboys are the team you want to target against in this one, because they are poor on the ground. They're poor through the air. So I'm not crazy about this one, but it's definitely one to consider as it gets a little bit closer to as well. I would like it more, actually, like I mentioned, if Elliott was active in this one, because if they're trying to feed him the ball, this is not the matchup you want to do that against. So that would work in favor for the Eagles. One thing that I do want to start doing on the show here, you and I have been having a lot of success with teasers. I feel like teasers need to be more mainstream, because there's just so many opportunities to make money on these teasers, while all you suckers like myself keep trying to do parlays and it didn't work out again. Big surprise. Teasers are the way. I have seen the light. I like teasers. 3 best teams in the NFL with 6-point teasers added: Dolphins, Bills, Titans. The 3 worst teams on a 6-point teaser: 49ers, Giants, Jaguars. It seems kind of right. 2-team teaser that I'm on this week: Browns, get them at -3.5. Chiefs, get them at -4.5. Browns 11-3 with the 6-point teasers. Chiefs 10-3-1. What's yours?
I might have just changed mine. It was going to be a nice little holiday one, Friday and Saturday. I was going to go Saints, tease them from 7 down to -1, and Tampa from 9.5 down to 3.5. But I honestly forgot to look all the way to Monday night and at the Bills and Patriots. Let's just look. I think the Bucks are going to beat the Lions. You can use them in a money line parlay maybe, rather than lay the 3.5. Getting through key numbers is a big part of this. And the Bucks, look, I think that they're going to win by more than 3, but only getting them to 3.5 leaves something open. We saw how bad they were in Atlanta last week. So I'm going to take the Saints on Christmas Day down to -1. Revenge against a Minnesota team that beat them in the playoffs in New Orleans last year. Saints down to 1, and then you got to wait it out all weekend, all the way to Monday night. I know people like you hate this. They want their money. Be patient. Just take the winner.
I want it today.
Bills down to -1. Saints and Bills are going to cruise, win those games. That is my teaser, and I'm changing it on the fly.
I'm going to take that, but I don't want to wait.
Yep.
That's a long time. And just real quick, if you're not sure how to build a teaser, because it's not overly obvious, but when you're on the DraftKings Sportsbook, you select those 2 spreads, change it to a parlay, and then a little button's going to pop up there, little pink button that says teaser. You click on that, change it to football 6 points. You will see the new lines right below that. So with the Saints and the Bills -1, you're getting it. Your odds are at 132.
I mean, 6-point is the classic teaser, but you will see a lot of options drop down. DK Sportsbook allows you to reverse tease if you love a line going the other way that you're very confident in. If 6.5 or 7 is a key number for you to get through, like I mentioned, getting Tampa to 3.5. If you make it a 7-point teaser, it gets Tampa to 2.5, and you get through that key number of 3. And then you have the sweetheart 10-point teasers, which you're going to want to use more than 2 teams in to get yourself better odds. But bumping something 10 is quite a few points.
Also on the odds for mine that I gave, Browns -3.5, Chiefs -4.5. It was even money when I first looked at this. It has now moved to 112. So obviously people are listening in onto the podcast as we record somehow and are already jamming the money in on that one. So, maybe get on that sooner rather than later. Any closing thoughts for today before we wrap up this edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast?
Last week we gave some NFL player props that did well. We didn't this week, but stay tuned. I think we'll have some of those. We just got to look into the spots a little bit more, and then follow along with the news for NBA. NBA's here. It's the first game of the season on Wednesday, so maybe not as many surprise inactives, but those are going to start to roll in no time. This is the NBA. So follow along with us. We'll have a lot of player props, both NFL and NBA.
And of course, you can always follow at DK Live on Twitter. That will be your source for news as it comes in, especially for NBA inactives. So if you want to set some alerts on there too as well, you can get all the information for all the inactives as it happens. And all the content that we put up on DraftKings.com/playbook. Julian, myself, number of other talented writers putting up a ton of content for NBA, NFL, NHL, I don't know, college hoops, drone racing. I don't know. Something's on there. All of this crazy stuff.
Sure.
Definitely go check that out too as well. That's going to wrap it up for this week. I'm Steve Buchanan. That is Julian Edlow. We will see you next week